The Combine Empire consists of the many species that the dominating alien empire have encountered and conquered over the years. One of these was the Combine Advisor. Although unseen by the majority of the resistance of planet Earth, this species had a major impact on the efficiency of the Combine and their continued reign. Although not a lot of information about this mysterious species was supplied throughout the Half-Life series itself, some media outside the games may have just given us the information we need to understand them more. Where did these species come from? How much of an impact did they have on the Combine invasion of planet Earth? And how deep does their lore go? Here we explore in the lore and story behind the Combine Advisor. Only a mere 7 hours into the Combine invasion of planet Earth, the human population surrendered and offered their servitude in return for their lives. As a human, Dr. Wallace Breen negotiated this deal on behalf of humanity, where he became Earth's administrator. From here, he reported directly to the Combine, where he acted as their spokesperson and attempted to keep the resistance of the enslaved species in line. Very little is known about the origin of the Combine Advisor, just like the Combine themselves. But as the spokesperson for humanity, Wallace reported directly to them, and in turn, they judged his ability to keep his species compliant. From appearance, the advisors are large, floating grubs with adaptations to their natural biological structure, suggesting these too were modified to serve in the Combine's army. But their appearance should not elude the fact that these are highly intelligent creatures. In their adaptation, the species were given a bodysuit and a collar. On this collar are symbols, but it is unknown what they mean. They could be from their homeworld or are Combine in nature. To explore and navigate their surroundings, the Combine Advisor were given a cybernetic eyepiece and metallic arms with claw-like appendages. While they often kept their distance from the resistance, when forced to, they were shown to use their arms to lift their enemies as they opened their masks to reveal a tongue-like appendage. In these rare moments, the advisors were shown to strike into the neck of a human resistance member with force, killing them. Not only did this take out one of the many of a growing army, but they were also able to absorb the memories and knowledge their prey had held, so that they could gain a greater insight into their enemies. Something that came in handy as the commanders of the Combine Empire on Earth. As of this moment, it appears that the Combine Advisors are the leaders of the entire Combine Empire, as no other species has revealed themselves, but we can never be too sure. Alongside their ability to guide an army and strike at foes when necessary, the Advisors are vulnerable to physical attacks due to the nature of their biological structure, but it would take luck to even reach an Advisor thanks to their powerful psychic abilities. Using these, they communicated with each other and humans. An example of this is when they would communicate with Dr. Wallace Breen telepathically as they guided him on how to govern the human population. To incapacitate a foe, they also used their telepathy to reach into the minds of the human to impair their vision and sight. To complement their telepathic abilities, they used their telekinetic powers to fly and manipulate the surrounding environment to their needs, a dangerous combination for anyone that got in their way. Although having come to planet Earth to conquer humanity, this planet was not a natural habitat for them, where they had to reside in the Citadel and other safe spaces across Earth in powered pods with life support technology, just until they were able to hatch. But it is unknown what they were waiting to hatch into. If their safe location were invaded by the Resistance or other dangerous factors, they would be escorted by Combine soldiers through the use of razor train or by foot to another location. From their pods, they communicated with Dr. Breen, the Overwatch and Skywatch to keep their control of humanity tight. While the majority of humanity were unaware of their existence due to Wallace being the spokesperson for them, the Vortigaunt species seemed aware of their control and ability to hatch. But as with the rest of the information on the Combine Advisor, or Shu'ulathoi in the Vortigaunt tongue, this information is limited. As Gordon Freeman returned from stasis, the advisors began to question Dr. Breen's ability to capture him and control the growing resistance, where he had to defend himself on many occasions. Breen was out of his depth and could not control the actions of the scientist to the point where Gordon led a charge across City 17 as the resistance attempted to take back the planet. After the resistance managed to confront Wallace in his office, the administrator fled and asked the advisor for refuge. In response, they offered him a host body to live on the Combine homeworld. But Gordon Freeman managed to stop Breen before he could transfer his consciousness after the scientist destroyed the Dark Fusion Reactor. With their spokesperson dead, the advisors took control of the situation. Now cut off from the Combine overworld, they ordered for the destruction of the Citadel so that they could send a message for reinforcements. As they did this, the advisors evacuated the Citadel one by one to safe locations outside of the range of the explosion that would happen after the Citadel fell. With the resistance gaining control over Sector 17, the advisors ordered their forces to recapture the planet. With their network, they were able to keep up to date with what the resistance were doing to stop them, where they paid close attention to the efforts of Gordon Freeman and Alyx Vance. After the fall of the Citadel, a super portal began to form where Alyx and Gordon began a journey to another secret resistance base, but they had managed to steal sensitive information from the Citadel. Information about the Borealis and the coordinates of the Combine overworld. The advisors knew that if this information were to be used by the Resistance, it would be even harder to regain control of Earth. So, they sent units after them to retrieve it, but these units failed their mission. After discovering the location of the secret Resistance base, the Combine advisors sent what they could to White Forest with the intention to stop the construction of a rocket that the Resistance were developing to close the forming superportal. As their hunters, striders, and various other units attacked, the advisors saw defeat once again. Unfortunately, the Resistance held off the unit and launched the rocket successfully, where it closed the superportal, cutting off contact. Although they had lost once again, two advisors noticed three core members of the Resistance in a hangar, who were preparing to travel to the north to locate the Borealis using the information they had stolen from the Combine. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the advisors struck and effortlessly pinned Alyx and Gordon to a wall as they lifted Eli and prepared to kill him. In one timeline, the advisor struck Eli in the neck and killed him, where it absorbed what it could from his brain as the other prepared to take Alyx. But a Resistance robot crashed through the ceiling and fought them off. Unprepared, they fled. In another timeline, with the interference of the G-Man, Vortigaunt energy traveled through time and struck the advisor holding Eli and killed it, saving Eli. Regardless, in both timelines, the advisors failed to regain control of the planet, but with knowledge of the Borealis, a ship that potentially had incredible technologies on board, their next fight would take place in the north to acquire it. This is where the official lore and story of the Combine Advisor ends. But this may not be the whole story. Half-Life 2 was originally intended to have 3 episodes after its release. We received Episode 1 in 2006 and Episode 2 in 2007, but Episode 3 never came. From what we know of Episode 3 and the originally discovered concept art, the Combine advisors were to be more prominently featured as Alyx and Gordon travelled to the north to discover the Borealis. We may never know what was truly to happen in Episode 3, but media release since could give us a good idea. Now, none of the information past this point in the video is canon, but I believe it could have been. With these pieces of media, I will only focus on the advisor parts as this video is about the Combine advisor. I am adding this as I feel I cannot make an in-depth video on the Combine advisor without at least diving into this additional media. Now, 5 years after the release of Half-Life 2 Episode 2 in 2012, Mark Laidlaw, a writer for Valve, began a Twitter account called Breengrub. On this account, he told the story of Wallace Breen as a new entity called the Breengrub and what happened to him, or a version of him, after his death. On this account, he also told the story of the Combine advisor and their origin. Again, this is not canon as it does not take place in the original story. However, there is evidence that the Breengrub was to feature in Episode 3, which I'll explore later. In this story, Breengrub mentions that there is, or was, a world, the home of the Shu'ulathoi. In the Half-Life series, the Vortigaunt refer to the advisor by this name. This world existed within the globular cluster, a place with erratic seasons with lethal properties. In the larval stages of the species, the Shu'ulathoi appeared as grub-like creatures, just like the ones we met in Half-Life, before they were adapted with cybernetic enhancements. Due to the nature of their planet, these grubs buried themselves to avoid the radiation of the planet as they waited to hatch. Although physically separated from their kind, they were not dormant. As a species of powerful psychics with a racial telepathy, they formed a psychic network and world with their minds, where the species thrived with philosophers, scientists, dreamers, sages, and composers of intricate art forms that only existed in their minds. Worlds that only the Shu'ulathoi could visit and explore. In these worlds, visions were traded like currency in their society, which allowed them to continue building their unseen worlds. While most of the species in this form lay dormant, connected to this invisible world, there were others who could simply not connect to their kin, so instead, they mated, laid eggs and died when new grubs grew and connected to the invisible world. This early age of the Shu'ulathoi was a grand culture of dreamers with little use for the waking world, or its insistence on material things. After hatching, the Shu'ulathoi turned into something new. Their psychic strength allowed them to imprint upon their own cells, where they turned into whatever they envisioned. While this would sound great, moving from the larval stage adapted their psychic and telekinetic abilities, where they could no longer connect to the dreamer's world, where the grubs would simply stop acknowledging them, and this cycle consisted for aeons. As with all great things, this golden age would not last. This mode of existence allowed them to create unseen worlds, but it also carried their seed of destruction. The Shu'ulathoi had the ability to create from thought, and one grub had a rogue thought of a parasite, a malformed thought with physical ramifications. Over time, the parasitic thought transmitted through their psychic network and spread, where the whole race of sleeping philosophers was quickly infected. As with most species, the strongest with natural defenses survived, while the weak fell victim to thought paths of depravity, while their molt became untenable and their abilities to reproduce were taken away. Although the Shu'ulathoi could not completely remove the parasite, the survivors learned to live with it, where it became a part of them. From time to time, there were similar eruptions, but having survived the initial parasite, the grubs had developed social mechanisms to isolate their depraved kin, where they severed them from telepathic contact to reduce the spread of the malign thoughts. This allowed the grubs to live on while the depraved kin died in solitude. For generations, they used this system to protect their unseen worlds as they hatched. This was until the Combine came across them. Upon discovery, the Combine found these vulnerable creatures in their dormant state. After examining them, they noticed the parasite that had developed on their physical forms, and using their advanced technology, they extracted the parasite and weaponized it. With their own weapons of thought, they injected their virus into the psychic network where it rotted the minds and culture from within. As the grub Shu'ulathoi were unaware of their physical surroundings, it was too late when they discovered what was actually happening to them. Some did wake up and were able to flee, but most of them fell victim to the Combine and their rule. Having gained access to the ruins of their invisible world, the Combine took all of the information they could about the Shu'ulathoi, and after finding many of the grubs, they set up a nursery and began experimentation on how this species could enhance their armies. They discovered that the Shu'ulathoi in their larval grub stage had powerful psychic and telekinetic abilities, and their bodies could act as hosts. The ancient parasite that the grubs had fought aeons before was adapted by the Combine and used to imprint various sentient classes onto the hosts. Therefore, the Combine could imprint many of their leaders, great minds, and whatever else they chose. With this, they bred and stored the creatures as blank slates to store the minds of the greatest thinkers they encountered as they conquered civilizations, but also soon discovered that this was just the larval stage. So, they attached a device to suppress their metamorphosis, and for those they used to hold their great thinkers, leaders, and warriors, they attached the amplifying devices we have seen for locomotion and investigation. The collar with runes around their necks may in fact be the device they used to suppress their metamorphosis, but that is more of a theory. This is where the backstory and lore ends for the advisors from the Breengrub Twitter account. This is such a detailed backstory and is perfectly connected to the Half-Life universe. At the end of Half-Life 2, Breen is offered a host body so that he can survive on the Combine overworld, and in Breengrub, it appears an older version of his consciousness was uploaded to one. This whole backstory of the Shu'ulathoi tells us that they are just another victim of the Combine, and that they are not in charge of the Combine invasions. But the minds inside of the grubs did come from somewhere, so it is likely that the Combine leaders, or copies of them, were transferred into the host bodies to aid in the invasions. In 2017, Mark Laidlaw posted Epistle 3 on his blog, which is a play on Episode 3 and gives the plot of what Mark envisioned Episode 3 to be. As of writing this script, Mark has taken down this post on his blog after it had been up for over 5 years. Anyway, in this story, Alyx and Gordon travel to the north and meet Breengrub. At this point, we were briefly detained, not captured by the Combine as we feared at first, but by minions of our former nemesis, the conniving and duplicitous Wallace Breen. Dr. Breen was not as we had last seen him, which is to say, he was not dead. At some point, the Combine had saved out an earlier version of his consciousness, and upon his physical demise, they had imprinted the backup personality into a biological blank resembling an enormous slug. The Breengrub, despite occupying a position of relative power in the Combine hierarchy, seemed nervous and frightened of me in particular. Wallace did not know how his previous incarnation, the original Dr. Breen, had died. He knew only that I was responsible. Therefore, the slug treated us with great caution. Still, he soon confessed, never able to keep quiet for long, that he himself was a prisoner of the Combine. He took no pleasure from his current grotesque existence and pleaded with us to end his life. Alyx believed that a quick death was more than Wallace Breen deserved, but for my part, I felt a modicum of pity and compassion. Out of Alyx's sight, I might have done something to hasten the slug's demise before we proceeded. From this extract of Epistle 3, Breen was successful in having his consciousness transferred into a host body, but this was an older consciousness as his physical body had died. This builds upon the lore given to us in Half-Life 2 and the Breengrub Twitter account as it essentially continues the story. Mark Laidlaw has spoken about Breengrub and stated this: basically it's me writing Dr. Breen fanfic. I am his biggest fan, and therefore all of this is non-canon. But what if it was planned to be? Well, on the 25th of April 2022, a Valve fan, David McGreevy, posted a tweet of him scanning never-before-seen Valve concept art. He is currently in the process of creating high-quality versions of them, so I will only show the one important to this video. While all of them are stunning and open up so many questions about what Valve was planning to do at one point, I want to focus on one image. On the top left here, we can see a grub-like creature. This one, the Breengrub, which is labelled Breen Host Body. Valve had concept art for the Breengrub, which was designed for the cancelled Episode 3. In this concept art, we can see how miserable he looks, which mirrors what he was like in Epistle 3 before he asked Gordon and Alyx to kill him. If the Combine could imprint a consciousness onto him, it is also likely that the backstory of the Shu'ulathoi, their dreamer's world, and the parasite that threatened it before the Combine discovered them was, at one point, considered to be a part of the plot. Mark has stated his work is fanfiction, but this lore fits perfectly into what we know about the Combine Advisor. I would love this backstory to be the true origin of the Advisor. We were given limited lore in Half-Life, so it would have been great to learn all of this in Episode 3. We know the Advisors were to play a more prominent role in the game as they featured in the concept art. If all of this information is actually canon, or was planned to be, I would say the Advisor, or in their original name, the Shu'ulathoi, are one of the most interesting species in the Half-Life series. This also begs the question, if the Shu'ulathoi that managed to escape the Combine had the ability to turn into any form they wanted upon hatching, where are they now? Are they hiding, still fearful of the Combine? Or are they working against them in a form that appears human, but is not? Regardless, going off the official canon information, the Combine Advisors are probably the most powerful known species in the Combine army. At the end of Episode 2, we see them now adjust to Earth's atmosphere, and if their bright minds can guide the Combine forces against the Resistance, as well as take on the Resistance by thought, then humanity will have a tough war to get through. With the Resistance now travelling to the north to find the Borealis and rescue Judith Mossman, the Advisors will also seek this ship in their endeavour to stop the Resistance to regain control of planet Earth. If Epistle 3 or Breengrub sounded interesting to you, I have already put together dedicated videos on each of these topics. This is a little different to the usual format of my lore videos, but I really wanted to make a Combine Advisor video. I felt I was missing a huge part of the story if I limited this video to the in-game lore. This recently discovered concept art has really opened up the door on what we knew about Half-Life 2 Episode 3. Breengrub was described well in the Breengrub Twitter account and Epistle 3, and I felt like these pieces of information perfectly fell into place. I am a little gutted that we never got to properly fight an Advisor, as every scene with them was scripted, which was a shame. But then again, these sequences showed just how powerful they were. One thing I do want to mention is that there is an unused particle system for the Advisors in the game files called Advisor Psychic Shield, which suggests they were to use this ability in combat. Here we can even see it. Maybe they were to use it in the development of episode 1 or episode 2, or maybe it was just preparation for episode 3. This was the lore and story behind the Combine Advisor. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a like and a comment on your thoughts. If you would like to stay up to date with everything I do outside of YouTube and fancy some behind the scenes content, then follow my Twitter and Instagram. Finally, I would like to thank my patrons and channel members who are on the screen right now, and an extra special thank you to my gold tier patrons and channel members: Jonas, Lewis, Queen Arby, Fluffy the Dragon, Mr. M791, and Ruben Mendoza. Thank you so much for the continued support. What did you think of this lore? Do you think that the additional media was going to be put into episode 3? And do you consider this additional information canon? Let me know in the comments below. Now, Combine Unit, enjoy your day. Bye.